I will read the notice and then hopefully folks will be able to come.
Go ahead.
Welcome everyone to the September 29th meeting of the Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee. Notice. This meeting may involve the remote participation by members, either by telephone or other electronic means, due to the local public health emergency, novel coronavirus pandemic, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota State Statutes, Section 13D.021. Welcome, everybody. My name is Alyssa Shuffman. I am the chair of the committee, and I am going to start us off by turning it over to Millicent to call the roll.
Hello, everybody. Aaron?
Here.
Adrian?
Here.
You're here? Okay, good.
Yep.
Armand?
Here.
And Bree? Oh, sorry, she's not coming. Dan Booty?
Here.
Miller? Dan Miller, are you here?
I am here.
Anna Newman?
Here.
Alyssa? Are you here, Alyssa?
Here.
Georgiana? Greg Souter? Heather? Tyler?
Here.
Janice?
Did you say Janice? Here.
I said Janice.
Yep. Yeah,
Jennifer?
your voice fades out, you know, like I hear the half of what you're saying.
Jennifer?
Here.
Jesse?
Here.
Joey?
Here.
John Barabs? Jordan?
Jordan is here.
Cadence? Kyle?
Kyle is here.
Marty's here.
Matthew Hendricks? Maya? Natalie?
Here.
Philip?
Here.
Robin?
Here.
Steve? Elmer? Wesley Durham?
Here.
Matthew Deardahl?
Here.
Arthur?
Chris
Here.
won't be here. Oh, he is. Okay. Sorry.
Flowers, yes, I'm here. All right, we have 22 present.
Thank you, Millicent. And then I'll just, before we move on, note that there seems to be a lot of background noise on the different mics today. So folks could make a point of being on mute when you are not speaking. I want to make sure that everybody can hear us all. So would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda and accept the August 25th Bicycle Advisory Committee minutes.
So moved, Garwood. Second, Dan Booty.
Okay,
Any discussion? All right, Millicent, please call the roll. Thank you.
Aaron?
Aye.
Adrian?
Aye.
Good. Armand? Armand?
Sorry. Aye.
Okay. Dan Booty?
Aye.
Miller? Dan Miller, do you vote on the agenda in the minutes?
I do vote. Yes, thank you.
Deanna?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Janice?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Jesse?
Yes.
Joey,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
Kyle,
Aye.
Marty,
Aye.
Lee, Natalie,
Here. Sorry, your voice cut out. Thanks.
Philip,
Aye.
Robin,
Aye.
Wesley,
So should I be voting today? I'm a little confused on that and I'm chatting with Adrian right now as well.
Yeah, I think it's okay for you since you are still a member until your replacement. I believe. What do you say, Matthew?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah,
Okay, because then
I think
I'm not sure that
I'll
Adrian
take
should be voting today.
hers off.
Oh.
We haven't gotten her oath yet, so I put you on, Wesley. Adrian, sorry, I took your vote off.
No, that's all right. I wasn't thinking.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, if that's sorted out, then I vote yes.
Okay, Matthew
Aye.
and Alyssa, will you be voting?
I will vote on the minutes and the agenda. I will vote yes. And then I also will note, Natalie, you said here, which is neither a vote yes or no in acceptance of the minutes.
Oh,
Could
dear.
you clarify your vote?
Yes. Natalie says yes.
Okay, gotcha.
I think I was also the second Matthew at the end. Is that right? So I'll say yes.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for adopting the agenda and the minutes. Before we move into our discussion, I just wanted to give Adrian a second to introduce themselves and say hello. We will, at future meetings, probably with the role, give folks different affiliations so that you can get to know all of us a little better. But I wanted to just take a minute so that you could say hello.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me, everyone. I'm excited to join the group. Wes has moved on to a different team within CPED, so I am taking his place. Big shoes to fill, so Wes is kind of giving me the updates on what you guys have been working on, and I've been with the city for about 4 years. I'm a principal city planner and designer. I've been doing urban planning and design for about 10 years. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is Janice. I just want to say welcome, and I hope you realize that the bar is set very high. Our CPED members have always been really among our best members.
Great. Glad to hear it.
Thanks, Adrian. Excited to have you and excited to get to know you and work with you over the coming months. It'll be, there's a lot on our plate right now, as I'm sure Wes has told you, so it's very exciting. If you have any questions as we proceed throughout the meeting, please feel free to let us or Wes know, and hopefully we'll be able to get your oath of office sorted out before the next meeting.
Great, thanks.
With that, I will turn it over to Bree, not Bree, because Bree's not with us today, but Heather. Is Heather here? I'm looking through the list.
Alyssa, I'm not sure if you saw the email. I'm happy to jump in. Heather also isn't going to be here today. If you want me to just briefly run through it and then kind of pass it off to some other folks for the complete streets part, I'm happy to do that unless you want someone else to handle it.
Yeah, I think that sounds fine. If I know, Phil, you gave one of the updates at 5Es, and so maybe if you want to jump in on that first item, and then I think Robin will talk a little bit about complete streets. And I don't think we have an action for the third item, but Chris, kick us off and we'll go from there.
Cool. Yeah, I was mostly going to see if Phil had anything to add. Phil gave us a brief rundown on the design chapter. So Phil, I don't know if there's anything you want to call out in particular.
No, but I'll take just 60 seconds to say it was certainly a useful prompt. for me and for others who will read one of the 7 topics within the Transportation Action Plan and summarize it. So of those 7 topics, I read the design for people section, and there are 6 strategies. Develop street design guidelines, foster vibrant public spaces, incorporate carbon reduction design elements into city infrastructure projects, green the streets, use street design to improve transit, and seek design exceptions when dealing with other jurisdictions. So those are those 6 strategies, and we had a short discussion. I presented some of the detailed actions, between 3 and 7 actions under each strategy. And for me, personally, it was an important chapter because it really talks about using designing streets, using designs as a platform for building environmental health, community social health and wealth. In addition to simply moving people and stuff, we think about streets as a way to move people, but in fact, what you're moving through is essential, and you want to improve those land uses. So that would be my sort of quick summary of that chapter, and we'll hear in other 3E subcommittee meetings presentations on other chapters.
Yeah, thanks. And maybe just a quick plug for anybody who's interested in looking through one of the chapters for another month. It's a really just kind of meant to read through and see what jumps out at you, see what you think might be good for the BAC to talk about or focus on, and give a quick kind of discussion prompt, I guess, for one of the meetings. So if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to myself or Bree or Heather, the subcommittee co-chairs. Thanks, Phil. And then Alyssa, I don't know if you want to do the complete streets one first. If you or I think you said Robin might have something to take over for that, but I think there's a little bit more discussion on that piece in particular. So I'll mostly just hand that one off to some of you.
I can cue us up with a little bit of context before I turn it over to Robin. So this was the first sort of formal presentation we've had from the internal Complete Streets policy team, but we have discussed this at a handful of meetings in the last, at this point, almost a year. So with the passing of the Transportation Action Plan, one of the goals in the Transportation Action Plan was to update the Complete Streets policy to account for freight and for green infrastructure. And so because of that, the city convened a working group of staff and stakeholders. The Bicycle Advisory Committee was invited to have a seat on there. So I was on that committee, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, other folks interested in all different kinds of transportation, from freight stuff to folks representing the downtown district in some way. So that group of folks met somewhat regularly. I think we had 4 full group meetings over the course of 6-ish months, as well as an additional small group meeting that was asked for or offered in response to a bunch of feedback from active transportation and sustainable transportation advocates. So Move Minneapolis, Our Streets Minneapolis, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committees had some additional conversation with staff about some concerns about updates to the policy. And then, the staff responded to a fair amount of those concerns and integrated a lot of feedback into the draft Complete Streets policy, but not all of the feedback that we shared. So obviously then Katie came with the draft that is final from staff to share at our 5Es subcommittee meeting. And it will be going to council for approval. I think their goal is by the end of October. So if we, want additional changes, now is sort of our moment to weigh in on that. I will turn it over to Robin to see if there's any additional context you want to add, Robin, about the last time we went through Complete Streets or sort of council's role in the approval process.
Yeah, maybe I could give just like a little tiny Cliff's Notes. When the Complete Streets policy was created in the first place, there was actually sort of a lot of policymaker engagement and involvement in it, much more than there has been on this one, at least from my perspective. So maybe they've had engagement with other policymakers and I just don't know. But there was a policymaker like steering committee that had representation from the mayor and 4 different council members that kind of guided the process. And I'm not saying any of this as any kind of a critique of the process that they've done to date. That was about creating something, and this is mostly leaving what was created back then pretty much in place, and just adding to it. So it probably doesn't need the same level of engagement from policymakers, but it is just to say council members have been very interested in the complete streets policy in the past, and I think they will be interested in this update as well, and especially in hearing what we have to say about it. So maybe Chris or Millicent, if you would be willing to put the resolution and the markup up on the screen.
Yeah, and just a note, Robin. So since these didn't go out with the agenda, we'll have to read everything that goes up here. So, but I will pull those up. Do you want them both up at the same?
Let's do the resolution first, I think, because it's relatively self-explanatory, especially when we start talking about the markup.
Okay, cool. And just let me know if that needs to be any bigger.
I think it looks okay. So this is an edit that I made of an original version that came from Alyssa, and I'll read it. The Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee supports improvements to the Complete Streets policy to better reflect the city's commitment to safer streets, climate action, and livable communities. As a critical policy document guiding our transportation decisions, the Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee strongly urges Public Works to make changes similar to the suggestions in the BAC's redlined version. So essentially what I'm doing here is just kind of like keeping this detail free and packing all of the detail into the markup or redline. I guess maybe any questions about this language?
I guess I have a question, and maybe it's for Alyssa. Do we feel like maybe there should? Let me back up. I feel like I have an understanding that a significant amount of the changes that were asked for by that group were indeed included. And if that is true, like, should we allude to that a little bit? Because reading this,
coming. Hi, you're in the bike lane.
Reading this, you may not know that. Alyssa, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I will say that group has communicated directly appreciation for all the inclusion of and like response to the feedback that has been given. So folks who were part of those conversations have received that feedback directly already. We certainly could allude to it, but like we have said thank you.
Well, it's more, and I appreciate that. And my thought is more for the audience that'll see this that wasn't a part of any of that. It's just my thought.
That makes some sense to me, Matthew, just to make sure that it's clear to folks, it's clear to policymakers that that there was a process and that for the most part we think it went okay, at least if that's what we think. So I could maybe work on another little sentence about that I could add in a minute after we go through the red line.
Cool. Thank you.
Robin, are you making this as a motion now, or are you waiting to make the motion until after we go through the red line?
I am waiting until after we go through the red line. I just wanted to explain the easy part first. So maybe we should get the red line up in front of everybody. And Chris, do you think it's sufficient for me to just read the changes in context, not the whole thing, please?
I think so.
The draft policy did go up online, so people did have reference to that, and so I do not think you need to read the entire policy. I think you can make note of the changes.
Thanks for that, Alyssa. Thanks.
Yes, as much as I would love to wow everybody with the dulcet tones of me reading the entire complete streets policy, I'll skip it. So the first proposed change is in item number 3 of the modal priority. It just deletes the words providing access for, so that it will read driving cars, trucks, and smaller freight vehicles. And how about we do it like this? If anybody has any questions about any of this until we get to the more major chunk, just pop in and ask. Otherwise, I'll behave as if nobody has any questions. The second change is to number 4. It just removes the word operating so that large freight vehicles is a standalone sentence fragment. Go ahead and scroll. Next change is to one of the bullets about the purpose of the policy. It says the city will, and it deletes the word advance and inserts the word achieve its goal of having 3 out of every 5 trips by walking, biking, or transit by 2030 as adopted in the Transit Action Plan. The next change is in this paragraph, and Chris, help me see what the paragraph was in context again. Oh, it's just the end of the policy framework section. And it's about emergency vehicles. So the preceding sentence is, although not identified specifically, emergency service providers are unique users of the transportation system and require special consideration to allow for the reasonable and efficient access to destinations in all parts of the city. And we would insert the sentence, fleet turnover in emergency vehicles, especially fire trucks, may need to include smaller and more efficient vehicles to accommodate complete street design features. Next, we changed some text in the modal priority framework. Number 2, it deletes the words improve the quality of life related to trip time and congestion, and instead inserts to significantly reduce space for cars as a key to making walking, biking, and transit competitive and attractive options. The next is in a set of comments about how to interpret the modal hierarchy in number 2. It adds, so the sentence originally said, as the city implements projects, it will prioritize the allocation of space for walking, rolling, biking, and transit. We would add the words, while actively reducing space for cars, trucks, and parking. Additionally, the city will ensure project designs include the walking, biking, and transit facilities identified in the Transportation Action Plan. Okay. So here we're getting into, I think, the more, at least the longer chunk of text. So this is in the implementation section. Second to last, or we would put in a new second to last sentence that reads, in the case more than one design is brought forth, all designs must follow the complete streets policy or seek a modal exemption. And then we would insert a new paragraph, essentially, and I'll just read that. So it starts with, Public Works will share the complete streets checklist for each project with the public, including advisory committees, and identify any modal exemptions being sought. Reasons for modal exemptions could include, and this is a bulleted list, sidewalks are proposed for less than the width recommended in the design guidance, or opportunities are missed to narrow pedestrian crossing distances. Streets on the All Ages and Abilities Network lack or have a lesser quality bicycle facility than what is identified in the Transportation Action Plan. Opportunities to introduce transit advantages like dedicated bus lanes and signal priority are not taken. Chris, please scroll down. Street design does not plan for a 20% to 60% reduction in vehicle trips per the mode shift goals in the Transportation Action Plan, and shift space from vehicular traffic and parking to other modes. That was the last bullet, and now there's one more little paragraph. Public Works will develop a process for stakeholders to give feedback to the City Council that a modal exemption should have been required for a particular project in the case that Public Works staff do not believe that one is warranted. And maybe before I go on to other things, we could have just like a little bit of an explanation about this. So in the existing Complete Streets policy, there is a process for talking about exemptions. There have not really been any exemptions that have ever come forward. My understanding is that Public Works staff would prefer not to have a specifically called out exemption process, although somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about that. My understanding is from Alyssa that others were really interested in seeing that exemption process continued and maybe be improved and made more objective and specific. And so this is an attempt to kind of like meet in the middle a little bit. So I personally think that we can't put all of the detail that we might want about how Complete Streets will be used on a particular project in the Complete Streets policy, because it covers so many types of projects in so many different locations, and I don't think we can probably put all of the detail that we might want into this document. But that said, I think that there should be a process for all of us to sort of publicly talk about and maybe disagree about. Does this particular project as proposed, or does this option for this project as proposed meet or not meet our Complete Streets principles, and have just an open conversation or debate about that. So this is an attempt to kind of tee that up in a way that will be maybe a little bit more transparent and a little bit more understandable for folks. I do want to say I don't view those 4 bullet points as being all inclusive or anything like that. Those are just kind of like ideas for reference. It's sort of the kind of thing that would trigger an exemption per mode. And so maybe with that, I'll open it up to see if anybody has questions about this particular text.
Robin, this is Philip. I would just say I like the approach. I think it gives leeway, but it puts some boundaries on what Public Works staff may or may not do. So I think, and it definitely makes it very clear that engagement and advisory committees are totally legitimized in weighing in if Public Works tries to sort of move through quickly a facility where it looks like perhaps the Complete Streets checklist is a little dicey in terms of it's being filled out, or the facility sort of according with the Complete Streets policy. So I like it.
Hey, Robin, just one quick thing from a staff perspective. I just want to share this as a non-voting member. In the first sentence saying that the Complete Streets checklist would be shared with the public, including advisory committees. As staff, I read that and say that we already do that because we put our Complete Streets with all layouts. So I just want to, if it's meant to just kind of like confirm that practice or something, that's cool. If it's meant to like ask for it to be shared in a different way and call that out, I just want to flag that there could be more detail there if you want that.
No, that's a good comment. I am definitely not trying to say that that's not happening now. So we could maybe add the words "continue to," but everything else in the document is like forward-looking about the stuff we're going to do. So yes, I don't want people to read that and think, Wait a minute, do they not know that we do this now?
Cool. I think the language works. I just wanted to make sure you weren't trying to offer a change there. Thanks.
I see Dan Miller has a hand up.
Yes, hello. I agree with Phil. I like what you're doing here. A question which I don't know this policy or this complete streets policy well enough, but things like the complete streets checklist sometimes can be found by the public, sometimes cannot. And I am wondering if in this document or if it's worth adding something about community engagement and robust engagement, of which these checklists may be part of, along with other stuff. It's just a question. It's not a one way or another. I don't know if it is included in there, if it's even needed, but thought I'd just bring it up.
So that's kind of what I was going for with the, we'll share the checklist with the public.
Yeah.
I mean, we could say as part of stakeholder engagement for projects or something like that, just to be specific about it.
Yeah.
To Chris's point, I think that's what folks are trying to do now. So anyway, I would be okay with a little change there.
Just to clarify a little bit, I don't know that it's standard practice for us to like use the complete streets checklist as an engagement tool per se. So it felt like maybe that's what Dan was suggesting. But
I think it's helpful in some cases. It's getting information out there, and I'm either one way or the other. I just know that I find pieces of information here and there that I think would be useful in conversations that come up, both in the public and at the BAC.
I think Matthew Dirdall wants to weigh in.
Yeah, I'll lower my hand. I think the conversation around the complete streets policy or checklist is interesting, but I don't think it's the big part of that sentence. I think the big part of the sentence is identify any modal exemptions, and then the bullets after that. So I think the point of like sharing the complete streets checklist, like Chris was saying, like, yeah, I think we do that, and I think it's worth talking about that. But I think the big part of this sentence and the big change from the conversations about the complete streets policy would be the modal exemptions. So I guess I wanted to note that.
I'll just respond to that a little bit and sort of also emphasize the last sentence Robin read around developing a process for stakeholders to give feedback that a modal exemption. Robin, I wonder if this should be required rather than should have been. That always puts us in the position of like the project's already over. Because like we have as a committee over and over and over again pointed out that projects do not follow the complete streets policy and have had that feedback not really be able to be funneled anywhere effective. And so that to me is actually the most exciting part of this paragraph, to say like we have feedback around that, we're going to continue to have feedback around it, and you need to figure out how to account for it. Phil?
Well, I mean, knowing that every street segment, every complete street is not able to accommodate all modes, maybe I don't quite understand Matthew's comment. So are what we saying here when we say identify any modal exemptions? Are we saying that if a street segment straight project facility does not include all modes, there'll be identification of those? We just know that sometimes we're not going to have freight, for example. That mode will not be accommodated because it's a tertiary street. So maybe I'm a little unclear about what's being said here.
So
can I jump in on this, Matthew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does say elsewhere in the policy, not all modes can be put on all streets. I think the intent behind this is to avoid a situation like we are currently facing on Hennepin Avenue, where there's sort of a decision being, we have like the transportation action plan says there should be a bike lane. The transportation action plan identifies it as a corridor where transit is really, really important. And we're considering not only not having 24-hour bus lanes, but not having any bike facility on the corridor at all. And so, you know, we have policy guidance that says we should do these things. And that would be a situation in which I would expect that Public Works would have to apply for a modal exemption as opposed to just bringing forth a project design that doesn't include a bike lane. Robin or Matthew, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I wish Katie White and our project staff on this were here, but I'm going to do my best. I think what I was saying is, you know, the original, and Robin touched on this, but the original Complete Streets policy that we put together had an exemptions paragraph that said similar things, but a little different, right? That we would ask for an exemption if certain things weren't present in a layout. In this update process, the steering committee or the committee of folks looking at it had some deliberate conversations of, do we have exemptions or not? And I think Public Works, I think we landed on removing the exemptions process from the Complete Streets policy. And what this is doing is just different than that, which is putting it back in essentially and being a little more specific. So when I say like the big part is after the first comma, or after the Complete Streets checklist piece, that's kind of what I mean is we're asking for a much different thing than what I think Public Works is prepared to propose to council. And I think that's fine that's always fine if you all want to recommend that. I just wanted to highlight that that's the major component to this.
I think that's right, Matthew. I'll also just add to Philip's question. I think that it's got to be project by project a little bit. So as I've been trying to think about the kinds of projects that we've seen come forward, if it's a new, transit, if it's the arterial BRT plan for Lake, I think we're going to be applying the third bullet in a different way than we would if it was a protected bikeway that's not changing curb lines on a street that doesn't have high frequency transit on. So I think it's got to be a little bit case by case, and it's got to be directed by the plans that we've already adopted. Essentially, it's and unfortunately, I think it kind of has to be a little bit of a value judgment by different people looking at our plans and looking at the proposed project and saying, does that get close enough to that? And so that's, I agree with Alyssa that the coming up with some way for the BAC, PAC, and other stakeholders to say in a meaningful way, we think that the Complete Streets policy has been given an exemption here, and we would like that sort of like understood as part of this process, will be more effective than what's happening now.
So it's really identify any modal exceptions being sought from sort of existing, like the TAP, BRT, transit plan. Okay, I get it. I understand. Yeah.
Janice, and then we maybe have time for one more comment, and then I would want to move on so that we can go through the rest of Robin's changes.
I just wanted to understand better what Matthew was saying. So Matthew, are you saying that something like this is Public Works wouldn't accept? So we're just this is just an exercise for us to suggest it?
I'll say that I'm not in a position I'm not comfortable saying what Public Works would accept or what the city would accept right now. What I'm just noting is the change that Public Works has proposed was to essentially not have an exemptions process because we follow Complete Streets, And then what this resolution is shaping up to be would be to recommend keeping exemptions in and changing it a little bit. So that's what I wanted us to know. I don't want to say what my bosses in the city council would approve right now.
Robin?
I'll just note, Janice, that it's the council that would adopt this. And so us giving some language to council members that they can use to make an amendment, whether it's in the staff version or not, I think is fully appropriate for this body to do.
I just want to make sure that I agree with that. It's your job to recommend, actions to us. So.
All right, I'm not seeing any more raised hands, so I'm gonna move us on, I think, to the next thing so that we can get through this document.
Yeah, so Chris, scroll down a bit more. I think there's something more. Oh, yes. In planning, second paragraph, second to last sentence, we would just erase. So that sentence is, for example, a design feature may be modified to accommodate emergency vehicles. That would be struck. I think you may have skipped past the thing up there, possibly. Yeah. Adding something at the last, in the last sentence of the last paragraph under design, so that it will say, the city supports opportunities to incorporate sustainable alternatives and placemaking elements within the public right-of-way, which may include urban landscaping, green spaces, public art, or stormwater management elements. When designing a street, the city will consider and evaluate metrics for, and we would strike all modes and insert primarily walking, bicycling, rolling, and transit within the right-of-way. And then under operation.
Before you move on, Wes has a hand up, I think.
Yeah, just a quick question on that. I understand where that change might be coming from, and I also see that there's a difference between having a metric for auto travel and prioritizing or deprioritizing auto travel. And I read this as say, well, I guess the word consider and evaluate. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I was reading it fast.
While you finish your thought, I will just, the entire of the paragraph above it really walks through in detail the sort of thing that we have heard a lot about, which is that like many of the city's partners require that we talk through, like that we measure things to do with vehicle, like speeds of vehicles and vehicle reliability and level of service through intersections. So it feels like that is very explicitly called out. And I don't think this sentence needs to account for that.
That makes sense. And as I'm reading it, I was reading it to say something different than I think it was when I looked back. But I think maybe like when designing a street, we'll consider and evaluate, like maybe what it could just say is like consider and evaluate metrics in accordance with the modal hierarchy of the complete streets policy or something like that. I mean, I think this suggestion fine is here too, though I'm not, withdraw my comment largely.
Dan Miller, do you have a comment on this as well?
Yeah, just a slight one, which may have a little bit of middle ground, and basically to strike primarily and replace it with to prioritize. And it's just a suggestion that I think might provide there are other uses for streets, but we really want to prioritize, which hopefully it's different than primarily. I'll leave it at that.
Or you could move primarily to the city will primarily consider and evaluate metrics.
I think that might change the functional meaning of the sentence to mean that like those metrics drive the project in a different way.
I'd vote for to prioritize. Reinforces previous language that talks about priorities and the hierarchy.
I'm good with that.
Like that.
Could you have it read? The grammar on that is hard.
Sorry. Here, wait. Let me. So it could either be metrics for prioritizing walking, biking, rolling, and transit, or Phil. I heard Phil just say to prioritize, which would mean striking the for and primarily. So it would read, when designing a street, the city will consider and evaluate metrics to prioritize walking, bicycling, rolling, and transit within the right of way. Is that what we want?
I'd go for it.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I'll go for it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Great. Let's move on to the next thing.
Okay, so this is the latter half, a new end to the first paragraph under operation. So it's to an increasing extent, parking must be actively and efficiently managed by 1, wayfinding, 2, time limits, and 3, dynamic pricing to both minimize the parking right-of-way footprint along specific corridors and to assure close street parking spots for those most in need, for example, those of limited mobility. That may be it.
Yep, I believe so.
Okay. So, oh, I didn't write the new little thank you chunk for the resolution. But does anybody have any other questions about any of this red line?
So I would move the adoption of the resolution with Robin to insert a sentence sort of thanking the small working group previously.
I'll second that. Dan Miller.
Any additional discussion? And I really want to encourage folks to speak up. Again, this is like one of the most used policies. We point to it, like every meeting. This is a really big important thing for our committee to be reviewing. So, Wes.
Oh, unmuted. There we go. So up at the bullet points that were up a little bit higher, probably should have said this comment earlier, but where there were the kind of the different examples of why an exemption might be sought, I was just thinking like, and this is just like, I think I'm in agreement generally with the idea that like we need a way out of these situations that we're kind of in with Hennepin and everything. I read some of these bullet points a little bit differently, and I'm trying to think of like how staff would approach them and that kind of thing. And so like some of these to me seem very obvious, and some don't as much in terms of how you like kind of sort through things. So like for example, which one was it? So like a missed opportunity to narrow a pedestrian crossing distance, and maybe this is the intent here, but like anytime a street doesn't have a bump out, that is technically a missed opportunity to narrow a pedestrian crossing distance. So I'm just like thinking about how do you read that, and like with some of the points here that are a little less overt in some of the planning documents that we have, how should folks be sorting through that? I think the same thing goes a little bit for like opportunities to introduce. I mean, I guess if you're like, I don't know, if you're the opportunity to introduce transit advantages, in particular around like signal priority, like anytime a new signal is going up, how are we supposed to think about it or interpret that? So, yeah, just wanted to kind of put that thought out there.
Yeah, so maybe I'll respond just a little bit. I struggled with this because if we have for instance, if we said we just have to have bus priority lanes on every high frequency transit route. Well, there are some that don't have more than 2 lanes, that more than 1 lane in each direction. So there are places like Lake Street where if we built out an arterial BRT system that didn't include a bus priority or dedicated bus lane, like that would be, to my mind, a major missed opportunity as part of that project. If we, on the other hand, didn't do such a thing where we kind of can't, just due to the way that street functions, I see it differently. I also am trying to account for the fact that some of our projects are just a protected bikeway, and we're not touching the sidewalks, we're not touching the curb lines, we're not impacting transit operations, or at least not much. So trying to make it so that those projects, which are doing good things that we want, don't have to go get an exemption because they're not doing everything that we might want on that same street, is the thing that I'm trying to get at here. And I agree, it's a it's a complicated needle to try to thread to say, don't deviate so much from adopted plans, or don't even really consider deviating from adopted plans, when there's so many different permutations of what that could mean. So does that help in any way? I'm also open to any ideas that you have about making it clearer.
I think in my mind, I'm thinking of smaller projects in particular, and just kind of, and smaller projects and prioritization as relates to I don't know. There's not a perfect way to do it, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just going to offer that you could try to break it down by reconstruction, full reconstruction projects versus other, and have kind of different levels of categories or things.
I will say, I think that's probably wise in terms of the process that we're suggesting for talking about exemptions. I think it maybe doesn't belong in this document.
Thanks, Robin. Any last comments before we call the roll on this? And then, Robin, do you want to read Robin, why don't you read the full motion? I think we did have someone moved and seconded. I don't recall who.
Sure. So the motion is: the Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee supports improvements to the Complete Streets policy to better reflect the city's commitment to safer streets, climate action, and livable communities. And then, Chris, here's where I would insert: the BAC appreciates being included in the stakeholder process for developing this Complete Streets update. As a critical policy document guiding our transportation decisions, the Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee strongly urges Public Works to make changes similar to the suggestions in the BAC's redlined version.
For the person who officially made the motion and seconded, is that amenable to you? That's the final motion?
Amenable to me. This is Philip.
Dan Miller seconded.
All right, I am not seeing any more hands. So at this point, I'm going to ask Millicent to call the roll. Thank you, Robin, for all of your work on this.
You got it.
Okay, Aaron?
Aye.
Come on.
Abstain.
Okay. Dan Booty?
Aye.
Dan Miller?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Candace?
Yes.
Jennifer? Jennifer
Aye.
Gordon?
Yeah, aye. Sorry.
Jesse?
Abstain.
Joey?
Aye.
Jordan,
Abstain.
Hayden,
Aye.
Kyle,
Aye.
Marty,
Aye.
Natalie,
Aye.
Philip,
Aye.
Robin,
Aye.
Steve Elmer, you still here?
Yes, I abstain.
Wesley,
Yes.
Matthew Deardahl?
Yes.
Great, it's 16. And Alyssa, sorry.
I will abstain because it sounds like we have enough to pass the motion. Thank you, Millicent.
Yep, 5 abstentions and 16 yes.
Thank you. And thank you again to Robin and everybody who has provided, I mean, both the explicit feedback on the complete streets policy, but I mean, every piece of feedback that we have provided and that you have provided as a committee over the years really continues to shape our perspective on what is important to highlight in the complete streets policy and what do we want to see from Public Works and from council members in moving this policy forward. So just want to extend my sincerest gratitude to you all for all of the work that you do every day. Thank you. With that, I will see if Chris has any other comments on CIP as part of the 5E subcommittee report before we close that out.
Sure, just briefly. So we talked about the CIP and equity and engagement specifically, how that relates to the CIP, and we're starting the process a little bit earlier this year is the intent, at least, to give a little more space to kind of understanding the CIP and how the CIP can interact with things that maybe we haven't thought of as directly in the past, such as equity and engagement. So we had some good conversation, went through some of the resources that were shared, including the resolution from last year, and then the CIP budget requests information, which is online, as well as some budget planning steps to sort of prep for a conversation this coming month where Mike Samuelson and I believe Trey Joyner as well will be coming to introduce the CIP. Some of you who've been on the committee before will have seen parts of this type of, they do this every year where they come and just explain what the CIP is, how we interact with the CIP, the different steps. It's basically a year-long cycle that repeats every year. They'll go over some of the highlights that have happened from this past year and what's in the mayor's budget. Also the group gave some kind of guiding questions and comments as to what they would like to see, what would be helpful to hear from Mike and Trey in terms of things that are maybe more visual or show kind of the breakdown of overall budget and how much we spend on bicycling specific programs or initiatives compared to other things that may be a little more car centric and things like that. So I'll be passing on that feedback. I've got more detailed notes on that I'm giving to them. If anybody else has anything else they want to learn specifically from them, feel free to reach out to me and I can get those comments to them as well as they prepare for the presentation. And then last thing is just a plug for the coming 5E where we will have them coming to present, and I believe that's the October one. And so again, especially newer members who haven't maybe interacted with the CIP too much, but also folks who have been around, it's a good refresher to kind of understanding that process.
Great, thanks, Chris. And then I'll also note that sort of as a follow-up to the CIP, right, like the capital portion of the budget, you know, that discussion that we're going to have in October, we will also probably have a little bit more discussion about the operating portion of the budget more broadly in November. So that'll just be something we'll try to do as a little bit of a follow-up. With that, I will close out the 5E subcommittee report. Thank you, Chris, for stepping up with our co-chairs out today. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dan Miller and Marty Grimes for the engineering subcommittee report.
Okay, good afternoon. I wanted to just relay to you all that the LIMS agenda has both the engineering subcommittee minutes as well as at the bottom of the page, the project sheets that were presented with the projects, and a resolution that will be submitted on one of them. I'm very appreciative that, let's me just get here. I'm going to go through now just briefly the minutes that were put together. And I want to start by just thanking the 10 members that joined us at this engineering subcommittee meeting and being able to respond to draft minutes and the resolution. And if there are, I'm going to go through this rather quickly, and if there are comments that members from engineering or the group in general want to ask afterwards, we'll have time for that. So the first project that was discussed was the 58th Sunrise Bikeway at 0%, presented by Christian Zimmerman, the Minneapolis Public Works. This is planned for 2022. It's an asphalt resurfacing from Lindale to 60th and is considering adding on-street buffered bike facilities as part of the project. If you recall, resurfacings do not do anything with curbs. They work within the boundaries that are there, and if it's on a AAA network, they consider whether they can put a bikeway on it. So it will not be a separated bikeway, but it would be some kind of a striped bikeway on the existing road. The project will include reducing and eliminating some parking, as well as reducing drive lane widths. Transit service has been discontinued during the pandemic, but may be reestablished afterwards. And safe routes to school markings will be maintained at the park and to schools. They are working with both the county and MnDOT to resolve safety issues at 58th and Highway 121 on the east side of this project. That's a busy corner, and there are improvements being planned that may be fairly limited for this project, but may be followed through later with MnDOT. So they're working in tandem there to get people over to Lindale and make a safer crossing. So far, there's strong neighborhood support for the bikeway. They're going to continue community engagement. No action is requested at this time, and they will return at the end of this year with 30%. I think it's pretty exciting materials, and it was a great presentation. Does anybody in the engineering that attended, do you have any other comments or general group? Okay, we're going to move on to the Graco Park Trail. This is a 0 to 15% review with Carrie Christensen, the Minneapolis Park Board, and she could not make it that day, but she had a terrific presentation that was recorded that went along with the program. And Chris thankfully took notes and filled in where Carrie was not there, so that's great. The presentation is a round 2 engagement. They've had initial engagement, and it's about project concepts. 3 of them were presented. Round 3 is going to narrow that down into a preferred concept, and that begins in November 2021, but it's a short process where they're going to approve the concept in January 2022. So it's coming up quick. Construction begins fall 2022 through 2023. And the park boundaries roughly are the river and Halls Island on the west side, Plymouth Bridge, 8th Avenue Northeast on the south side, Sibley Street Northeast on the east, and a future building site for Graco Company on the north side. Survey participants have shown high interest in nature and active living. 3 conceptual plans were presented. Final outcome will likely include parts of all 3 rather than picking one particular design over the other. 2 plans include a trail underpass beneath the Plymouth Avenue Bridge, which would be in addition to the street crossing that's near, that's the Sibley intersection. it would go underneath the Plymouth. And so an enhanced intersection at Sibley is being studied to improve crossing and turning over onto the East Bank Trail, Graco, and Boom Island Parks. This is the major intersection that connects the East Bank over Plymouth Avenue to West River Road. And so there's a lot of crossover traffic that comes both from commuting and recreation. Committee discussed tunnel option and Plymouth Avenue Bridge user access to East Bank Trail and Future Park. Preference for active living uses, natural habitat features, and limited parking. Comments about the plan can be made in an online survey, and I had an address there for you. That survey closes October 1st. I have to say I was very delighted about how they put together the survey, because it really asked you to point out the what you liked about each of the like, I suppose you could do the top 10, but you verbalized about it and then you rated it on funding. But it really made you look at the 3 drawings, and to me, it really pointed out that yeah, there's things about all 3 that I really liked. So, is there any comments, added comments that the group that attended engineering have, or general group?
You did a good job, Dan.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty accurate. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
So we're going to move on. Marty is going to take this from here. I was the primary author or collaborator to put together this draft resolution, and I'd like Marty to read that resolution and then take over the meeting and just kind of run the rest of it. So if I need to speak to what's in it, I'm not managing the meeting. So Marty?
Okay, this is a Graco Park Trail draft resolution, and Dan wrote this with probably some help too, I'm not sure. The Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee supports a shared use trail underpass in addition to an enhanced intersection crossing, exit and entrance at Sibley Street to better connect Graco Park, Boom Island, the East Bank Trail, and the river. Yes.
Marty, I think you got the wrong document.
Do I?
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, I will read it, and this is on limbs, and that
Oh,
was.
no, I can read it. I see it right there. I can read it.
Okay.
Right. Sorry about that, everybody. The Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee supports a shared use trail underpass to provide a safe, seamless riverfront trail connection for Graco Park, Boom Island, and the East Bank Trail. Pedestrian safety enhancements for the Sibley Street Northeast intersection to improve crossing between Graco and Boom Island, and access to the trail and parks from the Plymouth Avenue Bridge and the 8th Avenue Northeast. The existing underutilized Boom Island parking lot be considered as the primary public parking area for both parks, and that it be a right size to replace unneeded asphalt surfaces with green space. All right, everybody. Does anybody have any comments? Is everybody okay with this resolution? Anybody on the committee? Anybody?
So Marty, are you making that motion? I think then we're looking for a second before discussion here.
Yes, I am. I'm making.
I'll second it. This is Aaron.
Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. Any additional comments or discussion?
Hi, this is Jenny Borden. I would just say, hi, Marty, too. How are you? I love this. And I guess I hadn't tracked this. So an underpass that could connect Graco Park and Boom Island would be fantastic. I just know a lot of kids go to Boom Island and go to Halls Island and Graco Park on bicycles. And that is, Plymouth Avenue can have a lot of cars on it. So that's fantastic. I'm just happy to see that.
Anyone else? I know for myself, I love it when we replace unneeded asphalt surfaces with green space. I think that's a really, really important thing to do. Okay. Anyone else? Dan, did you want to speak to this at all?
Dan, you're muted.
I think it relates to what I heard in the meeting and leaves open the opportunity for individuals to go back and do their own survey if they so do. I tried to keep this specific to kind of what I think our purpose is as the BAC. So there you go. That's it.
All right. Phil, you have a question?
No, just a comment that as I recall in the presentation, somebody said, and maybe it was in the park board, that they had looked at parking utilization, or maybe it was just someone on the committee who knows the area. Maybe it was you, Dan. And I just wanted to point out it's really always important for someone to actually do some qualitative or quantitative observations and reporting back on the usage of parking, because as we all know, the standard line is, oh my God, where do I park? There's not enough parking. I'll never get a parking space. I won't go there. There's not parking. And it's always very useful to actually report the facts on the ground, which is mostly there is parking, and yes, you may need to walk, a little more, but that is, we just need to talk about this more, I think. And in this case, we may be able to get more space at Graco Park by not putting as much parking as at least one of the plans proposed, because there's plenty of parking just across the street in Boom Island.
I think Matthew has something.
Yeah, I guess related to the parking and just like thinking about the park as a place for people walking and biking to get to and travel through. I just, that's why I support the resolution so much, is that the intersection, the street intersection of Plymouth, is so important, both in terms of like the through route and meaning like to continue along the river and the trail, and then also just as like a welcoming feature for people that are not going there by car. And so that's why I think it's so important to say both 1 and 2 like you did. So just appreciate that.
Thanks.
So what's happening? You coming in tomorrow?
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Did Deanna?
Yeah. I went over there today, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I guess. And I can honestly tell you that there was an completely empty parking lot. In fact, there were multiple empty parking lots. But I had the opportunity to also see a bike come down Plymouth Avenue, cut diagonally across Plymouth to get over to make the left-hand turn onto the bike trail, which is one of the things that came up in the committee, was how dangerous that particular move is. It was the middle of the day, fortunately, and there was not a lot of traffic on Plymouth, but otherwise it would be without a signal there, almost impossible for somebody to actually make that move. But the other thing I also did is looked it over how a underpass might actually happen over there. I don't know if anybody has ever gone back over there. There's actually a few people living over there underneath of the bridge. The bridge is low. They did suggest as part of their presentation that there might be some budget issues. And so as enthusiastic as we are about this idea, I'm looking forward to a design that they think that they can afford in order to make it happen. It would be great.
Thank you. Candace, I saw your hand.
Yes. Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to share from my own observations about the parking in this area. The only time that I've ever seen the Boom Island parking filled is when there's been an event in Boom Island. But for the most part, Sibley is incredibly wide. There's more than enough room for 2 lanes of traffic to go through and cars to park on either side. And this was a new bit of information that wasn't available at the engineering subcommittee meeting, but we had the Fulton Grand Fondo last weekend, which is located just a block north of Lowry. And the reason why it's relevant is we have a lot of people drive in, like, 1,500 to 2,000 people who want to drive to the event, to ride their bike for the event, and ask about parking. And all of the overflow parking was sent down to Graco area. So there is a lot of parking capacity based on my experience, I don't think we should be too concerned, except for the provision of ADA specific accessible parking spaces. That would be the only specificity I would add to that. Thanks.
Thanks, Candace. Anyone else? All right, so what's our next thing, Alyssa? I don't see any more hands.
If there are no more hands or comments, then I think we can turn it over to Millicent to call the roll and do the
All
vote.
right, Millicent?
Okay. Aaron,
Aye.
Armand,
Aye.
and Booty,
Aye.
and Miller,
Aye.
Anna,
Aye.
Tyler,
Abstain.
Janice,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Becky,
Abstain.
Zoe,
Aye.
Cadence,
Aye.
Kyle,
Aye.
Marty,
Aye.
Natalie,
Aye.
Philip,
Aye.
Robin,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Leslie,
Yes.
Matthew Deardahl,
Yes.
Alyssa,
I think we have enough votes to pass, so I will abstain. Thanks, Millicent.
Okay, we have 17 yes and 3 abstentions.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else on the engineering subcommittee report before we conclude that? Okay, not hearing from Marty or Dan, so I think we are done with the engineering subcommittee report. And we are going to be done with this meeting very early. We're this fall. We're doing very efficient meetings, even if we spend 45 minutes talking about one resolution. So with that, I'm going to make some time for announcements. Oh, and maybe Matthew wants to add something during announcements. You want to be the announcement, Matthew?
Yeah. I guess I'll go with a question. I want to double check. Do I have or does Millicent have the complete streets as edited?
I believe that was being edited on Chris's computer, so Chris should have it.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yep, I've got that. I don't know if Robin was also tracking on his end, but I do have it.
Chris, is it just in the folder, standard folder?
Not yet, but it will be.
Awesome, thanks.
Robin.
Yeah, so folks can tell me if we have heard about this and I just didn't track it, but staff have brought forward something, starting a process on changing the way that we do traffic calming projects. And it is, I think, pretty cool. And it's definitely not finished. It's just starting. So I expect that we are going to hear more about that here. We got a presentation about it just for Cam and me, and I am actually pretty excited. It sort of formalizes the way that we have traffic calming conversations, and I would say makes them more sort of transparent, understandable, expectable, equitable. So anyway, I look forward to having more conversations about that. I'm pretty sure they're going to bring it to us. But anyway, I tossed the LIMS link into the chat if anybody wants to take a look at what came through committee yesterday.
Thanks, Robin. I don't think I recall having heard about that either. If we did, it was in passing. So similarly, looking forward to it. Chris, announcement from you?
Yes. Sorry. Really quickly, so Mike Samuelson asked me to share some information about the Whittier Lindale Bikeway, which work on that has started. And the few points he wanted me to share is one, that this will be mostly just reminders. This will be a 2-year construction project, so north of Lake this year and south of Lake next year. And then that there are a few locations that won't include concrete separated bikeways. One of those is First Ave South because of the upcoming reconstruction project. Another is 29th and Blaisdell because the signal will be rebuilt next year, which will provide more permanent separation. And then the third and last one is 29th Street between the Greenway and Blaisdell. And the Nicolette at Lake project will consider a more permanent solution there. So if you want any more information, feel free to reach out to Mike directly, or we can connect you.
Thanks, Chris. Cadence.
Yes, just as a reminder, since we get to do very little in-person mingling, Open Streets Lindale is October 10th, and Open Streets Minnehaha is October 24th. Come find me on the 10th, please. Thanks.
Thanks, Cadence. Any other announcements from folks? Natalie.
I just wanted to say yay, Open Streets, and also Cadence, it was nice seeing you on Saturday.
Likewise. Thanks for saying hi.
Thanks. I will make one announcement, which is that I believe the fall appointment cycle for city boards and commissions is happening right now with an October 1st deadline. There are going to be some open seats on the Minneapolis Planning Commission. If you or anyone you know is interested in serving on the Minneapolis Planning Commission as a body that has a lot of direct impacts on our streetscape and and the decisions that are made around different site-specific infrastructure. So applications for that are due October 1st if you or anyone you know are interested in that, or any other city openings for the fall appointment cycle.
I'll just offer a quick thanks to everyone in this group, those who are new and those who have been in it as long as I have this point, which is feeling like a long while, but kind of anticlimactic to have a last meeting virtual and all, but I'm not going anywhere and stuff, still working for the city and everything. So I'm sure I'll see you all around.
Thanks, Wes. It's been great having you here. I hope that if you decide at any point you're comfortable with an in-person happy hour for us to wish you well, that you feel free to send all of us an email. I, for one, will show up. Yeah, best of luck to you in your new position. And thank you so much for your many years of service. It's been really great, and we will miss you a lot. All right, I'm not seeing anybody else come off mute, so I think we should all wish Wes well, tongue twister, and call the meeting adjourned. Have a lovely rest of your Wednesday, folks. Happy, Wes, that we could gift you with a half hour of your time back for your last meeting.
Be well, Wes.
See most of you next month.
Thanks,
everyone.
Wes.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.